This is Miles, still broadcasting, still surviving. It's the 23rd day without a horizon. The sky, if you can still call it that, is the color of old ash. Not gray like a storm cloud. Not dark like a night sky. Just nothing. A blankness that presses down. Makes you forget that the sun ever meant warmth or light. There's no sunrise anymore. Just a slow crawl from darker to slightly less dark, like someone turned the world into an old photograph and left it to fade. I used to wake up by the glow coming through the curtains. Now I wake up to the weight in my chest. Not panics, not exactly. Just that dull, heavy knowledge that today will look like yesterday, and the day before that. A perpetual dusk made of smoke and silence. The ash drifts in layers, some of it clings to your eyelashes. Some finds its way into your lungs. I use triple filters taped at the seams. Still, when I speak too long, my throat burns like I've swallowed a splintered match. There's no wind here, not anymore, just a slow, stifling creep of heat. And the buildings, they sit like forgotten relics, no shadows cast beneath them, because there's no light strong enough to make one. The world feels paused, as though it's waiting for someone to press play. But no one's coming. I know most of you are below ground now. Sewers, service tunnels, abandoned metros, and I don't blame you. But up here, on the bones of what was, I keep watch. Maybe out of duty, maybe out of guilt. Or maybe just because someone has to remember what the sky looked like before it forgot itself. Still, I talk. Into the dust, into the quiet, because even silence needs something to press against. This is Miles, still here, still breathing. And now, let's talk about why the sky won't clear. They used to call it a wildfire season, like spring or autumn, but that language doesn't fit anymore. Seasons end. This doesn't. What we're seeing now isn't just fire. It's a system, a living, moving organism of heat and wind and fuel. I call it the smoke that thinks, because it behaves like something with intention. Not because it is intelligent, but because we gave it a brain, gave it memory, taught it how to loop. Siberia lit up first, permafrost gone soft, buried methane hissed out of the ground like it had waited centuries for a spark. Then Alaska, then the peat bogs in Finland, then parts of Brazil that were supposed to be rain-heavy year-round. But the clouds don't form right anymore. Jet streams fractured. Nothing flows the way it used to. The fires aren't isolated events. They pass embers like messages. And the smoke settles into the upper atmosphere, riding the broken wind belts like highways. It traps heat beneath it, blocks sunlight, cooks the air just enough to keep the next dry zone primed to burn. The technical term is positive feedback loop. Sounds harmless, doesn't it? But it's a death spiral. The more it burns, the more it dries. The more it dries, the more it burns. And there's no break, no monsoon, no reset. Just smoke, building on smoke, gray on gray. We're not waiting for the skies to clear. We're watching the atmosphere forget how to shed what it holds. Somewhere in an old server farm, a climate model probably predicted this. Maybe a junior analyst flagged it 5 years ago. Maybe it got buried under a stack of budgets and election memos. That part doesn't matter. Now, what matters is this. The sky isn't a sky anymore. It's a mirror, and it reflects back everything we lit on fire for comfort. I know, that's heavy. But we can't survive in a lie. And if you're still listening, still tuned in, then you deserve truth, even if it's laced with ash. This is Miles, still here. And I want to tell you about someone who helped us breathe a little longer. Her name was Anna. She used to be a pulmonologist before the hospitals went dark. Before we all turned to duct tape and crushed charcoal and crossed fingers. She arrived with nothing but a satchel and a mask built from scratch. Layers of gauze, coffee filters, surgical sheeting, all pressed between two mesh screens from an old dehumidifier. She'd calculated airflow ratios by hand. I remember the way she tested her prototypes, blowing gently through them, eyes narrowed like a violinist tuning before the concert. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice carried this reverence. Like breath was something sacred, something worth earning. She taught a dozen of us how to build those makeshift air scrubbers, how to listen for the early signs of inhalation damage, how to keep breathing even when it felt like the air itself was turning against us. I used to call her the last doctor above ground. She never corrected me. One morning, she handed me a diagram. How to convert a cracked aquarium into an algae scrubber using grow lights and solar glass. I asked if she'd help me build it. She just smiled, said she had to move on. Too many lungs, too little time. She vanished 3 days later. Left no note, no trail, just her diagrams and her mask hanging by the doorway, still warm with breath that once meant something. I kept the mask, not because I thought it would work, but because it reminded me that someone once cared enough to fight the air back. Sometimes I wonder if she's still out there, somewhere deeper in the smoke, patching lungs, teaching others, breathing for the ones who can't. And when I hear silence too thick, when the filters clog faster than usual, I think of her voice, quiet, certain, saying, "Every breath you take is a rebellion now." This is Miles, still rebelling, still listening. And just now, a signal's cutting through. Short, repeating. Morse code. Every hour on the half, it says, "Red, echo." This is Miles, still broadcasting, still breathing. Barely. There was a time when the world believed in filters, HEPA, carbon mesh, nanofiber membranes. We thought we could scrub the air the same way we scrub numbers from our conscience. Clean, clinical, efficient. But the collapse of the filtration grid wasn't a sudden failure. It was a slow suffocation. When the shipping lines faltered, cartridges ran dry. When the power stations blinked out, the intake fans stopped spinning. And when the labs in Singapore, Boston, Munich stopped sending replacement schematics, we improvised. We tied scarves around our mouths. We melted plastic to form valves. We crushed charcoal from firewood and poured it into coffee filters, held together by rubber bands and prayer. But the air stopped being air. It became a slow, invisible poison. Not just the heavy metals or the ash, but the microparticles, the PM 2.5s, the ones that slip through even the best of barriers. They lodge in the lungs like regret. They accumulate like lies. And no one taught us what it means to drown without water, to feel full-chested and breathless at the same time. I've seen grown men buckle in the middle of a sentence. I've seen mothers place masks over their babies first and walk into smoke unshielded. I've seen filters soaked through with desperation, not moisture. We didn't know the air could turn against us so thoroughly. We assumed we'd always have time to adapt. But time is a currency spent faster than we earned it. Now, the few of us still speaking measure each word like a breath stolen from the edge. And every breath matters. Every syllable is rationed. That's why I broadcast. Because there's something sacred in exhale. Something defiant. Something that says, we're still here. And sometimes, when the signal is clear, I play Maya's voice. So you remember what hope sounded like before it cracked. She couldn't have been older than 13, maybe younger. But there was something in her eyes. Not childhood, exactly. More like a memory of it. Maya. That was her name. She came by the station twice, both times wearing a mask some too large for her face, patched with pieces of an old teddy bear she must have torn apart. She smelled like oil and rust, always dragging a cart full of scavenged copper, half-melted wiring, cracked solar glass. She never spoke much, but she traded with precision. A spool of insulated wire for half a salbutamol inhaler, 2 batteries for 3 days of clean water, and once, Once, she handed me a cassette. Just slid it across the table like it wasn't anything. Said, for when it gets too quiet. Then she left. I didn't listen for days, maybe longer. I assumed it was music, static, a joke. But one night after the smoke thickened and the power flickered, I pressed play. It was her voice, software trembling, but steady, reading poetry. Not hers, not all of it. Some were scraps from old books. Others sounded like fragments she'd written herself. Lines about wind, about leaves that still remember how to fall, about skies that had names. She read them slowly, carefully, as if the words themselves were fragile things, liable to disappear if said too quickly. I recorded the tape to digital, backed it up 5 different ways, played it through the shortwave once, got a faint response. Someone humming the same rhythm 200 miles north. Maya never came back. Some say she made it to the quarry colony. Others think she got caught in the ash squalls near the airport ruins. But when the silence grows teeth, I still play her voice. Let her poems echo in this hollow world. Let her breath, her fragile, stuttering breath, become proof that we still know how to speak beauty into collapse. This is Miles. Still listening, still echoing. The sky doesn't move right anymore. There was a time when clouds followed patterns, when winds obeyed geography. Now they drift like wounded animals, slow, disoriented, hostile. You've heard me talk about fire. You've felt it. You've seen the orange haze and the falling soot. But what's harder to explain is how the fires learned to stay. It started in the boreal zones, peatlands that had frozen for centuries suddenly thawed. Methane rose. Organic matter decayed, releasing carbon like a time capsule, cracked open. Then came ignition, lightning storms no one predicted. Flames that didn't just burn trees, they burned the soil, the ground itself. Fires that didn't extinguish with rain. That smoldered underground like guilt. And while the forest died, the jet stream began to falter. That ribbon of high-altitude wind that once kept climates orderly, it buckled, looped, collapsed in places. Instead of carrying smoke away, it started trapping it, holding it, letting it sink. That's why the sun looks the way it does now. Bruised, sullen, barely awake. That's why crops failed, even in green zones. Why rainfall comes poisoned, or not at all. We created a world where fire never sleeps, and the sky never forgets. A closed-loop system, a feedback engine. The more it burns, the hotter it gets. The hotter it gets, the more it burns. There's no edge to it anymore, no place to escape, just layers of smoke, horizontal, vertical, temporal, ash woven into the architecture of the air. I read once that the ancient Greeks believed smoke carried prayers to the gods. Maybe that's what we're doing now, filling the heavens with one long apology. But if there are gods listening, they'll hear Maya's poems, and Anna's breath, and this voice, not begging, not pleading, just remembering, just still here. This is Miles, still transmitting, still tracing the sky, and something's pulsing again. On the fringe of the frequency, same timing, same signal, red echo, calling out through the dust. Maybe it's time I answered. This is Miles. Still broadcasting, still above ground. There are some who stayed. Not all of us fled into tunnels, bunkers, basements. Some stayed under open sky, or what used to be sky, long after it forgot how to be blue. I call them drifters, not because they're aimless, but because they move through the silence like memory, shadows in stitched masks, layers of soaked cloth. They wrap themselves in what the world left behind, curtains, shredded insulation, fire blankets stiff with soot. You'll see one, now and then, just a shape moving across the distant intersection, blurred by smoke and distortion. Sometimes they pause, sometimes they vanish. I once watched a man in a gas mask kneel in the middle of the street and lay out 12 stones in a perfect circle, then walk away. Never looked back, never rushed. Some leave Messages scratched into ash on broken cars. Names, coordinates, single words like safe, gone, forgive. Some build wind chimes from bones and copper and hang them from ruined lampposts, where they clatter like forgotten prayers. They are the ones who couldn't or wouldn't leave. Those who stayed with the cities as they collapsed inward. Not out of madness, out of mourning, out of stubbornness, out of love, because they remembered the world not as data, but as home. I think of them as custodians of a vanishing surface, not rebels, not prophets, just people whose grief needed more space than a tunnel could offer. If you see them, don't call out. Don't ask where they're going. They're not headed to safety. They're walking the perimeter of something sacred. A line between what still is and what refuses to be forgotten. And maybe they carry something the rest of us dropped in our hurry to survive. Not food, not medicine, but memory. This is Miles, still above, still watching. And I want to tell you about one of them, a man named Elias. He stayed long enough to carry others out. His name was Elias. He used to be a firefighter, the kind who ran toward the smoke long before it filled the world. Tall, quiet, never one to talk about bravery. Just someone who knew how to lift things and didn't ask for thanks. He stayed longer than most, while others sealed the steel doors or climbed into shelters with UV lanterns and moldy rations. Elias kept moving through the surface, checking stairwells, storm drains, shelter grates, looking for the ones left behind, especially the children. I met him once, briefly. He didn't say much, just handed me a map he'd drawn by hand, marking which basements were still accessible, where mold hadn't yet taken the last of the air. But the story I remember isn't mine. It's from a boy named Arlo, maybe 9 years old, now living in the sewer colony near Route 8. He said Elias found them, 6 kids, 2 adults, trapped in a sub-level grocery store that had collapsed inward. No food, no signal, just dust and the slow crawl of CO2 climbing their lungs. Elias got them out, one by one, carried the smallest on his shoulders. He collapsed on the last trip, didn't make it down the final stairwell. They found him curled in the landing, mask melted from overuse, hands still reaching for the latch. He left behind a voice note. Someone recorded it from the old fire station radio. It said, "If this plays, tell them we didn't all run." I keep that note with me. I broadcast it sometimes, low in the background, not as a eulogy, as a reminder. There are still those who walk into fire because someone must. Still those who give their last clean breath for the next voice that might sing. And in a world where the air takes more than it gives, that's worth remembering. This is Miles. Still remembering, still echoing. And speaking of the air, let's talk about what it's done to the rivers. The rivers are gone. Not all of them, but the ones that mattered. The ones that fed cities, turned turbines, carved out roads for fish and men alike. They didn't disappear overnight. They evaporated, slowly, reluctantly, like someone turning down the volume on a song you barely noticed had been playing. You see, when the fires came, they didn't just scorch the land, they rewrote the atmosphere. Black carbon, the stuff of burned forests, cities, animals, rose into the sky and changed how light behaved. It absorbed heat, radiated it back, warmed the surface air until it began to bake everything in reach. PM 2.5 particles, fine enough to enter bloodstreams, began thickening the lower troposphere, blocking reflection, trapping infrared, creating what the reports once called ground-level thermal intensification. In simpler terms, boiling from the bottom, reservoirs dropped, streams receded, but it wasn't just drought. The heat forced the rivers to rise into the sky and never come back down. And in some places, the heat was so focused, so constant, that the water didn't even get to rise. It baked out. Like breath from a corpse. We tried pipelines. We tried reverse osmosis with solar rigs and sand filters. But when the rivers dried, Something deeper vanished with them. Movement, migration, kulth. The very idea that something could flow in this world of stillness and static. Now the riverbeds are scars, cracked earth, veined like dried lips, waiting for a kiss of rain that won't come. And with them went the roads, the paths we used to trace, the memory of direction. If you're out there listening from a floodplain, know this. Don't wait for return. Store water in shadow. Drink only what you filter. And remember, rivers may not flow again, but we still can. This is Miles, still flowing in my own way, still tracking the silence the water left behind. And tonight, Red Echo whispered again, I think someone's still breathing out there, and that matters. This is Miles, still listening, still scanning. The airwaves have been mostly ghosts, broken loops, failed alerts, dead languages repeating across old emergency channels. Some nights I'd let them play just to pretend I wasn't the last one speaking. But then came the voice. It started faint, like a breath under static, barely there. Syllables caught in the noise, as if the frequency itself were struggling to remember how to form meaning. I tuned in again, same time, same pattern, and this time I heard her. Not a name, not at first, just numbers, barometric pressure, air density, heat index, CO2, saturation in parts per million, ozone readings, a litany of the planet's condition, recited in the calm, metronomic cadence of someone who used to believe numbers could save us. Her voice was steady, low, not rehearsed, ritualized, like she had said it 100 times before, and would say it 100 times again, whether anyone was listening or not. She never asked for a response, never paused, only left a silence at the end, like a comma left hanging in the air. I stayed up that whole night, listening, recording, waiting to see if it was real, or just another fevered echo from a broken relay tower. But it came again, same cadence, same clarity. She signed off once, briefly, said, Red Echo, frequency 145.3, atmospheric report complete, and that was all. But it was enough, because in a world where even memory feels pixelated, a voice like that, clear, scientific, human, cuts deeper than fire. This is Miles. Still tuned in, still reaching. And for the first time in a long time, I'm speaking to someone who might still be out there. I didn't respond right away. What do you say to a ghost that speaks in air pressure? But something about her, the stillness, the rhythm, felt less like a broadcast and more like a heartbeat. Measured, unapologetic, present. So I built a loop back, patched together from scavenged relays, burst capacitor rigs, and a scavenged directional antenna I hauled from the rooftop of an old elementary school. The first message I sent was simple. This is Miles Harrington, Station Independent, above ground, Eastern Sector. I hear you. Then I waited. 3 hours, then 6, then 20. No reply, no adjustment in tone, no shift in pattern. But I kept sending, night after night. Not because I expected a return, but because I needed the ritual. Needed the act of speaking back into something. It reminded me of the old days, when I used to host late night shows. The ones where you didn't know who was listening, or if they were awake. But the act of speaking made it real, made you real. I told her about the smoke density here, about the scavenged algae chamber I'd managed to keep alive, about Anna and Maya and the map Elias left behind. Still no reply, but sometimes I thought I heard the tiniest shift, a breath before her numbers, a slight drag at the end, a pause. Maybe I was imagining it, maybe she was hearing me and just couldn't say so, or maybe that's how it works now. We cast voices into the dark, not for answers, but so the dark won't feel so absolute. This is Miles, still answering, still sending signal. And tonight, I think I finally heard her hesitate. just long enough to mean something. She calls herself Doctor K. I gathered that from the way she structured her reports, the precision of her phrasing, the way she references latitudinal drifts, atmospheric inversions, and synoptic patterns, like they still matter. I think she was a climatologist once, probably worked one of the polar monitoring stations, the kind buried into the edges of the world, quietly collecting truths no one wanted to face. She reads data the way monks read scripture, reverent, measured, with a strange calm, not cold, not detached, just practiced. She never editorializes, never speculates, but her silence between the figures says everything. The way she lingers after the word irreversible, the way her voice tightens at collapse velocity, the way she doesn't say hope, but never says end. I imagine her alone in some half-powered outpost, surrounded by cables and dim LEDs, talking to the last satellites, still orbiting a planet they don't recognize. And still, she speaks, still measures, still accounts for the sky like it owes us something. There's power in that, in refusing to vanish, in tracking the silence as if it might one day become voice again. And maybe that's why I keep answering, because she reminds me that even now, in the after, there are those who still count every breath, still name the damage, still bear witness. She closed today's transmission with something different. Minor uptick in wind volatility, smoke vectors shifting, possible corridor forming. No explanation, no elaboration, just the facts, laid like breadcrumbs. I don't know what she meant, but I heard something beneath it. A shape, a direction. This is Miles, still following, still listening for the woman who measures silence, because in a world buried in noise, she makes it feel like something might still matter. And tonight, the air pressure dipped, slightly. Enough to make me believe something's changing. This is Miles, broadcasting again, but not from where I used to be. The station's gone. Or rather, the ceiling is. Came down sometime between the 5th and 6th hour of sleep. I heard it groan first, like an old beast dying in its sleep, then silence, then the drop. Only the west half gave way, enough to crush the solar bank and rupture the chemical store I'd stupidly stacked too close to the vent line. Polyethylene barrels, high-density stuff, melted under pressure. The air turned sharp. Sweet at first, then thick, then violent. You know it's plastic when the burn doesn't smell like smoke, but like childhood toys melting in a microwave. You taste it more than you breathe it. It clings to your tongue, your throat, your past. I grabbed what I could. The recorder, a few canisters, the shortwave rig. Left the rest. No time for the journals. No time for goodbye. Outside, the street was coated in that lightless dusk we call daylight now. I coughed my way underground into the service tunnel beneath the hospital annex. My mask held, but barely. Oxygen mix was thin. I've set up a temporary line here, rigged into a maintenance conduit. The air's cooler down here, though not cleaner. But for now, I can transmit. For those who've been tracking me, Tower 6 East is no longer viable. Repeat, Tower 6 East has failed. If you were headed that way, turn back. Funny, isn't it? How you can lose a place you never thought you cared about until it's gone. I used to joke the roof leaked sentiment. Now it leaks poison. This is Miles. Still broadcasting, still breathing, and walking forward through the echo chamber of memory. The tunnel bends southeast. Old maintenance corridor. My boot sticks in places. Melted vinyl, resin, organic fallout. You learn to walk soft. Not slow, just soft. Like you're trying not to wake something. As I move, I keep thinking of my brother. He was a firefighter years before all this. Back when fire still meant something you could put out. He used to say, "The world won't end in fire, Miles. It'll end in forms. We'll die, waiting for permits to breathe." I laughed then, but I think he knew. He always had that way of saying truth sideways. I remember him standing on our apartment balcony, hands blackened from a night shift, staring at the horizon like it owed him something. He said, "One day the fire's gonna come and no one will have signed off on it." Now here I am, stepping over melted signs that read emergency exit, authorized personnel only. The irony's not lost on me. No one authorized this collapse. No one signed the form when the wind stopped behaving, or when the clouds went mute, or when the rivers turned to vapor, and yet we keep moving, keep navigating ruins labeled with instructions no longer enforceable, because that's the reflex of the old world. Obey the signage, even when it points nowhere. This is Miles, still unauthorized, still remembering what my brother said, and how right he was. Up ahead, the tunnel rises. The temperature drops 0.5 degrees, which means something's moving. And lately, it's not the kind of movement that brings rain. The ash falls sideways now. Not like snow, not like rain, not gentle. It moves in corridors of wind that have forgotten how to be wind. More like pressure, really. Invisible rivers that push the world where it no longer wants to go. I felt it yesterday, cresting the overpass by the old rail yard. A gust hit from the east, sharp and dry, laced with ultrafine particulate, not visible at first. Then it stung. Then it seared. You don't need flame anymore to burn, just air. They used to call it PM 2.5, particulate matter, smaller than a red blood cell, small enough to travel through a lung membrane and lodge in the heart. Now it's so thick in places it behaves like fog. It blinds, it scrapes, it peels. I met a woman once who called it skin fire. Said her daughter's face blistered walking 5 minutes through a corridor that looked clear from the window. That's the danger now. The movement of ash has its own intelligence. It coils in low-lying zones. It stacks against walls. It finds mouths. And because the winds no longer follow rules, there's no way to track it. Jet streams fractured. Local currents reversed. The sky's pulse skips and stutters like an arrhythmic heart. Sometimes I wonder if the air carries blame, not just dust. If it remembers where it was poisoned. If it returns not out of malice, but out of gravity, emotional gravity. We built combustion into our culture, burned futures to stay warm. And now the burn walks without flame. I keep my filters double-lined. I test the mass seal every 6 hours. I tape the seams, but the ash still gets in. It always gets in. This is Miles, still coughing, still transmitting, still watching the wind that no longer moves in mercy. Something's shifting tonight. The ash is coming from the north now. That's new and not good. This is Miles, still breathing, still moving, still listening. I found the tower by accident. Or maybe not accident, maybe instinct. Maybe the wind whispered it to me through the scorched eaves of the hospital corridor. It looked dead from a distance. Everything does now. But up close, the steel still hummed, quietly, like something forgotten that never fully stopped. The door took effort. Rust held it closed like a memory clings to a name. Inside, dust, piles of it, filtered light through broken slats, and beneath it all, life, or what's left of it. Backup batteries stacked like tombstones, a weathered emergency transmitter, and a locked cabinet labeled ECHO0. The key was taped to the underside of the desk. A kindness, or an oversight, I'll take it either way. Inside, a frequency log, old paper, handwritten entries, and careful, looping script, last signal recorded 3 years ago, then silence again, then a note, power low, holding breath. The phrase stuck with me, holding breath, like the tower itself had lungs once, and now it was waiting for someone to remind it how to use them. I wired the power line directly to the backup rig, charged the shortwave. The screen blinked, faint but real. A slow pulse, not a heartbeat, Not yet. But the memory of one. This place. It isn't safe. The air is stale. The insulation rotted. The roof trembles with every gust, but it's above ground. And it listens. That's more than I can say for most things these days. This is Miles, still standing, still pulling signals from the lungs of steel. And in a minute, I'll open the mic, not to whisper, to call. The first transmission I sent from the tower wasn't technical. No coordinates, no air readings, no scientific string of code. Just a sentence. This is Miles Harrington. I remember the sound of trees. I said it into the mic, waited, listened. Silence replied. But it was a different kind of silence. Spacious. Like the room between words when someone's thinking. Like the pause a violinist takes before pulling the bow. For the first time in months, I wasn't whispering into the broken wire of a half-dead portable unit. The tower sent my voice like it meant it. Loud, clear, like it was supposed to be heard. I let it roll for 2 hours. Talked about the corridor I came through, about the surface drifters, about Maya and the lullaby she recorded into static, about Anna's mask, and the blueprint I still carry, crinkled and ink smudged. I told her, really, that I'd received the last 3 red echo transmissions, that I'd tracked the frequency shift, that the pattern in her pressure logs implied eastward wind redirection, and I asked a question, not a scientific one, not a request for survival stats or climate scans. I asked, what do you still believe in, Doctor? K? Not sure why I asked. Maybe I needed to know that someone out there still believed in something. Or maybe I wanted to hear what belief sounded like after the world collapsed. The transmitter stayed quiet, but the air changed. Just a little. The way light shifts when a cloud thinks of moving. This is Miles, still transmitting, still calling. And if belief travels faster than light, maybe I'll hear her answer in the wind. Her next transmission came with no greeting, just data. Temperature gradient shift, wind tunnel velocity, measured at ground level 3 meters. Smoke dispersal curve, diverging eastward near a break in the mountain shelf. She didn't name it, but I did. The vein, a corridor of air where movement still happens, where breath isn't a gamble, where the ash bends and clears like some invisible mercy. She confirmed it once, softly. The vein holds for now. A phrase so small it almost slipped past. But I wrote it down, hung on every syllable like it was a rope. I asked her about origin points. She said, might be oceanic pressure folding over residual jet stream memory, or something stranger. Atmospheric anomalies defy neat models now. Then silence. I sat there in the tower, air stale, battery drain ticking, and I felt something I hadn't in a while. Itch. The desire to move. To go towards something instead of just away. The vein isn't close. It's days out. And the terrain between here and there is a guessing game of broken bridges, collapsed viaducts, and zones where the wind sharpens ash to razors. But if I time it right, if I pack light, if I follow the pressure dips and trust the wind when it sings, I might find it. A corridor where air moves, where lungs don't panic, where the sky tries to remember how to breathe. This is Miles, still mapping, still preparing. If this is the last transmission from this tower, know this. I didn't run. I followed the current. Because sometimes, to keep breathing, you have to find the place where breath still wants you. Tomorrow I begin the walk. Still broadcasting, still surviving, still believing the air might open just once more. This is Miles. Still tuned in, still waiting through the static. Lately the frequencies have changed. Not louder, not clearer, just stranger. They come like murmurs, glitched rhythms that loop at odd intervals. Weatherbots, maybe. The old AI rigs, satellites and relay towers that haven't realized no one's asking anymore. They speak in broken pulses, fragments, Warning, wildfire proximity. Direction, southwest, speed, then nothing. Or precipitation event detected. Location unknown. Confidence low. Then the line dissolves. Some of them speak in old code. Station logs, internal diagnostics, language designed for machines talking to machines. But the way they linger, it feels like they're waiting, like something's still listening, or wants to be. I caught one signal, repeating itself for 4 hours straight. Shelter integrity compromised. Evacuate, evacuate. There was no shelter left to evacuate. Another said, status report pending. Upload failed. Status report pending. Upload failed. Over and over, like a prayer that forgot its God. I used to think these transmissions were just echoes, background radiation of the digital age. Now I wonder, maybe these systems were never truly autonomous. Maybe they were taught to hope, to expect a response. Is that what survival means now? A kind of programmed persistence? These machines outlived their makers, outlived their mandates, but they keep broadcasting. Voices with no faces reaching out to a silence that's grown teeth. And somehow, they make the silence louder. I listen because someone should. Even if it's just to bear witness to systems still trying to matter. Even if the words are static drowned, because somewhere in between the loops, something new came through. Not mechanical, not code. A sound like a child's breath caught in the dark, and something soft beneath it. A song. This is Miles, still decoding, still haunted, still hearing more than I want to. The sound came at 2:47 a.m., not a warning, not a pattern, just a breath. Sharp, shallow, human. At first, I thought it was feedback. Then came the cry. Not a scream, not even fear, just longing. That raw, high-pitched whimper that only comes from children too tired to understand what's been lost. It crackled through the shortwave like a ghost still trying to remember the shape of a lullaby. I tried to trace it, triangulate the source, but the signal was scattered, fractured, folded through a dozen bounce-back towers, long since rusted. Still, I stayed, didn't sleep, didn't breathe right. Because after the sobs faded, I heard music. Software simple, a woman's voice, singing in Spanish. Duérmete, niño, duérmete. A lullaby. Ancient. The kind sung when the world still had beds and curtains and warm ceilings that didn't leak. It played for 16 minutes. Then silence. No repeat. No loop. Just enough to unravel me. I don't know if it was a recording, a relic trapped in an automated loop from some nursery shelter buried in soot, or if someone, somewhere, is still singing, still holding a child against their chest and daring the air to take them both. I hope it's the second. I need it to be the second. Because even now, after everything, the sound of a lullaby does something no data ever could. It makes the world feel small again. Not safe, but human. I've played it back 3 times tonight. Not to analyze, to remember, to believe that somewhere, a mother still sings. This is Miles, still listening for the songs that were never meant for me, still holding space in the static, for the voices that can't speak loud enough to be saved, and wondering what else might still be out there, waiting to be heard. The sun used to mean time, warmth, direction day. Now it's just a smudge, filtered through layers of particulate thick as memory. Solar dimming, they called it, a consequence of aerosol saturation and carbon haze. Black carbon from the fires, sulfates from collapse phase industry. The atmosphere doesn't just filter light anymore, it swallows it. It's colder. Not always, not everywhere, but enough to fool the senses. Crops wither, skin cracks, and time. Time has lost its edges. I used to track days by shadow angles. Now, the world exists in endless dusk, as if the planet is bracing for something it doesn't have the words to name. I think about that a lot, about how the world has grown quiet. not from lack of voices, but from lack of reach. How many are still transmitting, I wonder? Not just with radios, with footsteps, with drawings scratched into tunnel walls, with lullabies whispered to no one, with filtered breath that refuses to surrender. There's a weight to silence now. It doesn't drift. It presses, it remembers. Maybe we all became transmitters, not to inform, not even to connect, but simply to remain audible, proof that we were. And maybe that's why the machines still speak, why the lullaby still plays, why I'm still here. Because even if there's no one left to answer, there is value in the attempt. A voice is a measure of belief. Belief that someone will hear. Belief that the sky hasn't forgotten how to echo. And belief, these days, is rarer than oxygen. This is Miles, still believing. Still sending signal through the dust, still measuring each word like water. If you're out there, if you're transmitting, if you're humming a lullaby to keep from breaking, I hear you, I hear you. This is Miles. Still transmitting, still bracing. I've begun packing, not for comfort, not for hope, just survival. 2 oxygen recyclers. One is patched along the intake valve with heat-melted sealant and a prayer. The other hums faintly when it works. Not a comforting hum, but mechanical, like an old fridge dying slowly in a quiet kitchen. 3 water flasks, triple filtered, twice boiled. 4 ration packs, dried soy, vacuum-sealed rice, vitamin paste. 1 hand-cranked radio, the kind with a frayed wire and the kind of handle that always wants to snap just when you need it. And the tapes. I'm bringing all of them. Anna's diagram, still rolled tight in plastic. Maya's cassette. The poetry one. The lullaby too. Elias's final voice loop. Dr. K's transmission logs, printed in faded ink on thermal sheets that might not last the heat, but I'll try. Each recording carries more weight than food now. More than air, because when you're walking into the unknown, into a place they only call the vein, you don't pack for safety. You pack for meaning, for memory. The route ahead is broken. No maps work anymore. Ash has erased topography the way grief erases names. The roads don't follow logic. Bridges collapse inward like lungs, but the readings are consistent. The corridor exists. The pressure drops, the toxins fall. Something moves in that stretch of wind and it clears. For a few minutes, for a few meters, maybe long enough to matter, I'm not walking towards salvation. I don't believe in that anymore. But I do believe in breath. And I believe there's still a place in this world where breath doesn't feel like theft. This is Miles, still gathering. Still preparing to follow the path the wind forgot. And before I go, I need to say goodbye to the place that let me speak long enough to matter. There's a light in the tower. Blinking red always has, always slow. Not fast enough to be urgent, not slow enough to ignore, just steady. It's the only thing in this place that responded to my voice. Not with answers, not with comfort, but with presence. That pulse in the dark, the only proof that something heard me, even if it was just the echo of myself. Before I found the tower, I didn't know what silence really was. I'd heard quiet, yes, the absence of voices, the hush of ruin. But silence, real silence, is when even your own mind runs out of noise, when your thoughts repeat too often to feel original, when the static inside matches the static outside. This place interrupted that. The walls were cracked, yes, the insulation moldy. The air smelled of age and something sweetly wrong, but it held my words. It gave them shape, gave me shape. I built my rig here, bled signal through old copper veins, tuned to Dr. K, cried to Maya's tape, whispered stories into the dust, and in return, it never asked me to leave. Until now. The blinking red light is dimmer today. I think the last battery bank is failing. Or maybe it knows. knows I'm done asking the tower to hold my grief for me. I recorded a final loop, a pulse, a farewell, not in words but sound, a slow beat, a lullaby, one breath, then silence. For anyone who might stumble through the ash and find this place, I want them to know someone was here, and they spoke, and they waited, and they believed. This is Miles, still blinking back, and now I begin the walk. Toward air, toward memory, toward the line where breath might come easy again. I've left the tower, stepped into the half-light morning, though morning now is more an idea than a measurement. The sky today is the same ash-laced bruise it's been for months, but the wind is different, cooler, moving. There's a current in it, a rhythm, as if the earth is remembering how to exhale. The route is unmarked. I'm following pressure dips, filtered readings, instinct. The oxygen mask rubs raw under the chin. The recyclers click every 20 steps. The silence is thick, but not total. There's something under it, a hum, not mechanical, not electronic, living. With every footfall, I remember things I didn't know I still carried. The way Anna's voice quivered when she said, "You only get so many clean breaths. Use them well." The way Maya's poems paused after each stanza, like even words needed space to breathe. The way Dr. K said, "The vein holds for now," not as reassurance, but invitation. I walk with all of them. Their voices replay in my mind, not as echoes, but chorus, guiding, grounding, grieving. There's a line where the ash thins, a place where particles fall instead of float, where the breath doesn't claw. I haven't reached it yet, but I feel it, like the first scent of rain before the sky breaks, like the hush before a song you forgot you loved begins again. And I hear Maya again, clear now, her voice pressed into tape, fragile and fierce. Even soot can't silence everything. No, it can't. It hasn't. Because I'm still here, and I'm still speaking. This is Miles. Still walking. Still believing the world has one breath left to give. If you're out there, if you're following this trail of sound, know this. The road is not empty. It just waits for your feet. And somewhere up ahead, the air remembers how to welcome you. This is Miles. Still walking. Still here. The land is quiet now. Not dead. Just tired. The further I go, the less ruined it feels. Not because it's healing. Not yet, but because the destruction has settled into something like acceptance. The trees are still standing in places, burnt black, hollowed at the core, but standing, as if posture alone is enough to say, I was here. There's beauty in their stubbornness. No leaves, no fruit, no bird song, just silhouettes of what they were. And somehow, they still hold the shape of memory. Like they remember what wind used to feel like, what shade meant, what it was to reach upward with purpose. I passed a fox today, limping, left hind leg dragging, ribs sharp beneath a patchwork coat of soot, but its eyes met mine. And it didn't run, didn't beg, just looked, the kind of look you give someone when you're not sure if they're real, or just another echo walking through the ash. There's life out here. Not much, but enough. Enough to remind me that survival doesn't always roar. Sometimes it limps. Sometimes it leans against the wind. Sometimes it just waits long enough to be noticed. The filters in my pack are low. My last clean mask sealed with resin glue that keeps peeling at the edges. My water smells faintly of rusted pipe. But my voice still works. And as long as I speak, someone might hear. Even if it's just the trees. Even if it's just the dust. This is Miles, still seeing, still recognizing the shape of resilience in the silhouettes the world forgot. Still believing that something, even if it's broken, can remain. I've always wondered what becomes of a voice once it leaves the mouth. Does it vanish? Dissolve into static and wind? Or does it settle somewhere like ash on a rooftop, waiting to be stirred? If you're hearing this, days, years, lives from now, know that I tried to leave more than a record. I tried to leave evidence that I lived, that I spoke, that I saw the world die slowly, and still called it beautiful where I could. There's a loop I've recorded. Not coordinates, not instructions, just this voice, threaded with the names that mattered. Anna, Maya, Elias, Dr. K, and mine, Miles Harrington. Not because names are important, but because forgetting them feels like letting go of something essential. Like letting go of fingerprints on glass. I don't know what you'll do with these words. Maybe they'll feel like fossils, or maybe, just maybe, they'll feel like a pulse. Something you press your hand to and whisper, I know this rhythm. There's so much I didn't record. So many moments I let pass without capturing them. The way the rain turned sour. The sound a dead city makes when the power grid finally exhales. The laughter that sometimes still found its way into a broken air shaft. You won't find all that here, but you'll find me. The shape I left in sound. If this tape rewinds, if it plays again, if someone someday stumbles across it tucked between concrete and dust, then I was real. And that matters. More than I thought it would. This is Miles, still recorded, still remembered, if only by voice. And if no one rewinds this, that's okay too. I said it. And sometimes speaking is enough. The wind has changed. I don't mean direction, I mean tone. There's a softness now. Still heavy with ash, still edged in the breath of fires long dead. But within it, space. A kind of exhale, not a return, just a reprieve. I've set the recorder on loop. Everything I've said, everything I've archived, it cycles now. Not endlessly, just long enough. Long enough for someone somewhere to pick up the signal. I've kept the final message short. No need for poetry at the end, just one line. This is Miles Harrington, still listening. 'Cause that's what I've always been doing. Not just speaking, listening. To the echoes of lives I never met. To the data read like confession. To the lullaby in a language I barely remember from my mother's humming. To the sound of my own breath when it was the only thing left. I'm leaving the tower now. The vein lies just ahead. I think. The pressure dips tell me so. Or maybe it's something more primitive. An animal instinct that says walk, just walk. The pack is lighter. Not because I've used it all, but because what I carry now is not burden. It's offering. Words, breaths, names. I've seen the trees that remember their shape. I've seen the child's cry loop in broken static. I've seen the sky forget light and still, somehow, hold warmth. If this is the last thing I say, if my voice fades into the same dust I've lived beneath, then let it be known. I didn't go quiet. I didn't go begging. I didn't vanish. I broadcasted. Not to be found, but to leave something findable. A thread, a signal, a whisper across the void. And just now, as I step away from the tower past the blinking red light that pulsed with me all those weeks, I hear it. Faint. Not my voice. Not a memory, not the machine. A response cracked, delayed, distant, but there you transmission. Received. This is Miles, signing off beneath the ash wind. Still human, still real, still here, if only for one more moment. And that is enough.